My name is Alexander Wayne, and like many people watching this, my favorite place to get a meal. And every weekend like clockwork at around 2:30 p.m., I would stop by my favorite McDonald's joint and order 2 Big Macs with fries, along with a Happy Meal for our 10-year-old daughter. This quickly became a routine for me, as everyone at home really loved and expected these McDonald's meals every Saturday and Sunday. But this all changed after my horrible experience at the infamous McDonald's restaurant. It all started on the 17th of August 2016, way to my usual McDonald's to get our lunch for the day. But it didn't take long before I noticed something was different. I was used to seeing at the counter, named Blake, wasn't there today, as he had been replaced by a female who looked to be in her mid-30s. A bit disappointed, as I was already used to Blake, as he usually had my order ready for me before I even came in. I decided to ask what happened to Blake, and when he'd be returning, but before I could speak, she said,
"Hello, what would you—"
I noticed she sounded stressed and was clearly not in a good mood, so I decided not to bug her with my questions. I would like 2 Big Macs and a Happy Meal with a side of fries to go. I replied as she jotted away on her notepad and returned to tell me that she'd have my order shortly. "I can tell you're having a bad first day, huh?" I said, small talk while I waited. She looked up at me and smiled before saying,
"Is it that obvious? I was a bit rude."
I figured she assumed I was upset and was trying not to get in trouble with her manager. "No, there's nothing to apologize for. I just noticed you seemed a bit stressed." She smiled at me before I continued with, "Someone Blake's going to be coming back. He's the guy that worked here before you." I tried not to make it seem like I didn't like her service when—
"Oh, he quit yesterday, I think. So I'm sorry, you're stuck with me for now."
laughed at this comment, and before I could say anything else, my order was ready. So I paid the bill and headed out. I was in my car about she ran out to my car with something in her hands.
"You forgot your ketchup with those fries. I'm Chrissy by—"
I found this strange, as I was completely sure I didn't order ketchup with my fries, but decided it was probably a mix-up and just replied with, "Xander, it was nice meeting you," before starting my car and leaving. A couple of weeks went take Chrissy long before she memorized my order and had it ready for me every time I came in. We would find ourselves talking in the middle of her, sometimes ask me to come over during her breaks. I understood to some it would seem weird, but it was a completely platonic relationship. Sure, Chrissy knew from the start that I was married, and she would usually ask how my daughter was doing and ask to see pictures. One, Chrissy called to tell me she needed to see me because she was really stressed and confused. I told her I would stop by to see her after a rainy day, and I completely forgot and ended up just going home. We were all in the living room watching a movie that night when sudden knock on our door. I quickly got up to check who it was, and when I opened the door, I saw Chrissy completely drenched, this furious look in her eyes.
"Why didn't you come to see me?"
she said. I immediately remembered I had promised to see her and felt quite bad for her, but at the same time, I was still really shocked as to why she would come all the way to my house. I must have been lost in my thoughts because I still hadn't answered her question. Chrissy didn't seem to like this at all, as she—
"It's them, isn't it? Are they what's coming between us?"
I didn't seem she meant by them, but I knew I owed her an explanation, so I replied with, "Chrissy, I'm sorry. I know I see you, but I had a rough day and forgot." I then continued with, "But that doesn't justify you coming to my home at this. That's simply inappropriate. Not to mention, it's pouring outside." It wasn't until I finished talking that I realized paying any attention to me at all. She seemed to be staring at something behind me. I turned to see what she was so focused on. My daughter was standing behind me. I didn't know how long she had been there, but I knew it was time for Chrissy to leave. But before she was already gone. My wife demanded an explanation that night, asking who the woman was and why she came at night. I wanted to explain everything to her, but I knew it would seem odd and she would immediately think I was cheating. So I told her it was nothing. But as I lay in bed that night, I wondered and hoped that it was really just nothing. For the next few days, I tried going over to my McDonald's joint to see Chrissy, but she wasn't there, and eventually quit her job a while back. I asked when she had quit, and surprisingly, it was the same day she came to see me at home. Gone by now, and if I'm remembering correctly, it was the 19th of November, 2016. But more importantly, I headed out to get our McDonald's meals, and as I drove there, I found myself wondering if Chrissy was okay. McDonald's restaurant and the new guy Jake, who had taken over from Chrissy, looked at me like I was in the wrong place. It was weird because he had weeks and knew I always came in by this time to get my order. "Good afternoon, sir. Was there a problem with your order?" with a truly concerned look on his face. I assumed he was joking, so I said, "Order? I haven't gotten an order, Jake." I then laughed and continued with, "I'll have the usual." Jake, who was still visibly confused, wrote my order over. "I'm sorry, sir, but a delivery was made in your name to your house earlier today with your order. Of course, your meal will to you, but are you sure there isn't a mix-up?" As I heard what he said, I was more concerned than confused as I asked, "Called for the delivery?" "A woman," he said. "She called about an hour before you came in. I assumed it was your wife." Shocked, I then responded with, "And who made the delivery?" He smiled and said, "Well, sir, happy to hear this. Chrissy came back 2 days ago and needed a job. Unfortunately, her position was filled, but we had..." I wondered why he was telling me this, when all I asked was who made the delivery. But it all made sense. "Our delivery guy had an unfortunate accident and ended up in the hospital. Chrissy was happy to take his position, so I'm guessing she made..." I immediately ran to my car and began speeding home, and the only thing that was on my mind were the words,
"They're what's coming between us."
So I called the cops and told them there was a possible intruder in my home. Immediately, I knew something was wrong. Our front door was wide open, and I could hear Chrissy screaming upstairs.
"Come here, you little..."
I ran inside the house and immediately headed up the stairs when something caught my eye in the living room. I knew that hair anywhere. It was Jade's, my wife. I walked over to her slowly with tears forming in my eyes. Moving, and I could see the massive pool of blood around her. But I didn't want to stop. I arrived at her body, stab wounds in her stomach and chest. I fell to my knees and began crying. "Jade!" A huge part of me knew she was dead, but I refused to believe it was true. I knelt there crying, his voice again.
"Come here, you little bitch! Come here!"
I immediately realized it was my daughter she was talking to. I could feel a hole in my chest and my heart beating heavily as I started checking the rooms for where she was. Suddenly, I'm in her room, followed by Chrissy struggling while saying,
"Come here! Come here!"
Had sirens in the distance, and I rushed to her room to see Chrissy dragging my daughter out of her closet. "Chrissy," I said, scared, "why are you doing this? Please stop." Chrissy then dragged my daughter out and held the knife to her throat before saying,
"Why am I doing this? Can't you see, Alex? They are the problem. It's keeping us apart. Can't you see?"
Her eyes were wide and cynical and moving downstairs. "Please," I said, dropping my head to the floor and crying. "Please, Chrissy. I have." Chrissy responded with,
No, don't be sad. You have me. I'm all Alex, not this little bitch, and certainly not your wife."
Before I could say anything, 2 policemen stood beside me with their guns pointed at Chrissy. "Put down the blade, ma'am, or we will be forced to open fire," one officer said into the room approaching Chrissy.
"Don't come any closer, or I will cut her."
Back before looking at me and saying,
"Is this what you want? Tell them to go away, Alex. Me."
"Ma'am, step away from the child and put the blade down," the officer said, cutting her off.
"All of you shut up. He loves me. She's the problem. You're all, and I can't have that."
She then pushed my daughter to the ground before charging at the officer. She dropped dead to the floor. After the incident, an investigation was carried out, and it was no records before that and had no mental illness. I was told by the police that some people aren't born evil or simply decide to be, and sadly, Chrissy was one of them. It was later also proven that she was an accident of the previous McDonald's delivery guy in order to take his job. My daughter went mute for a couple of weeks, only funeral, when she ran to her mom's casket, screaming. Mommy, Mommy. In my bed for a few months, and I tried my best to hide when I cried myself to sleep from how much I missed Jade. My daughter had to undergo therapy after a few months, but eventually became herself again. It's been since I always remember the first day I met Chrissy when I walked into that McDonald's restaurant. And despite all the happy days it gave us, McDonald's truly gave me was a broken life and a happy meal.
My Imran, and I'm a Bosnian who lives in the United States. I've lived here for 11 years now, but the story I'm about to took place in my hometown in Bosnia. Back in Bosnia, my dad and I loved to fish in the River Drina. Weekend, and we'd sit in our boat for hours, catching the biggest fish we could find. My father, Haran Imran, was very young, as was my grandfather before him. Fishing was something I enjoyed very much as a kid, as it brought me joy and happiness. I really thought I would always love fishing with my father, but little did I know that it would also bring me the chance of my life. Growing up in Bosnia as a kid, every once in a while I would always hear about a weird happen at the Drina River, where Dad and I used to fish. These strange tales became folklore in our little town. Grandfather Amar, who was also a fisherman, always used to tell me, "Don't be scared, my boy. It's polite to the Imran men." And I believed him. Well, I did. Till one fateful afterthing changed. There was a strong wind that day, and I remember my father wasn't feeling good, so he decided we should go fish. It made him feel better. It wasn't long before the sky turned gray, and the dark clouds already started looming above us. And I saw my dad smile, as every true fisherman would tell you, the best time to fish is during the rain. Boat out to the Drina River and cast our lines out in the water. It had already started to rain heavily, but for some reason, the water was calm. I remember thinking to myself that there had to be some disturbance in the water, as it really seemed odd to me that the river was eerily calm. I eventually brushed it off, as I told myself I was just being paranoid. But unfortunately for me, of many weird experiences we would go through that day. We stayed there under the rain for a while and caught nothing. This was also very odd to me and Father, as we always caught something, no matter how bad the weather was. That fact was also one of the major reasons why I believed my grandfather when he said the river was polite to our family. I began to voice out my thoughts as I told my father, "Maybe the stupid river has run out of fish." My dad then laughed to say something, when in a split second something huge hit our boat from beneath us. The hit shocked me and Father as we wind that rocked the boat that violently. The boat then continued to shake as me and Dad tried to steady it, but time was persistent as it kept hitting the boat from beneath. My dad, who was just as confused as I was, "Try to steady the boat, son, while I go into the water to check." I felt fear overtake me at the thought of being, and so I began to contest my father's decision to get into the water. We both knew that there were no dangerous creatures like crocodiles in the River Drina, as it was solely inhabited by fish. This was why my father wanted to check it out himself, but take that chance. I also knew my father thought it was the Maldika fish, a massive and rare fish known as the Queen Drina, the only thing in the river capable of sending the boat rocking. My father already had his mind set on it, and before I could continue, the boat was struck hard. This time, I lost my balance and fell into the cold water. As I with the water, I started to shiver as it was seriously cold. I could hear my father calling out to me from the boat, so I began to... Growing up near the river, I was an excellent swimmer, so it didn't take long to get to the boat. As I got closer to him, Father said, "That's my boy." And I could see the look of relief on his face, but as I was about to reach out a hand, I felt a cold hand touch my chest from beneath the water, and I instantly became paralyzed. My limbs now, I started to sink. And despite my efforts to move my hands and legs, I still couldn't feel or... That's when I began to hear strange whispers. At first, I thought my mind was making them up, but that was when I was making those noises. Even today, nobody believes me, but I know what I saw. Suspended in the water was a woman-like creature with gray, sagging skin right in front of me. And her gray, scaly skin hung like a loose garment from her bones. She was in one word, terrified. As she opened what seemed to be her mouth, I started to hear her voice as clearly as I would hear a normal person's voice on land. The sensation freaked me out as I knew full well that hearing her voice, this clearly, was impossible, as we were underwater. I also couldn't make out what the woman-like creature was saying, but I can still hear her voice every time I think about it, to this. I then felt scaly, cold hands encompass me as I began to sink deeper. My lungs already felt like lead struggled to beat. I had accepted my fate as I knew whatever this thing was, there was no way I was going to get away from it. Before I could close my eyes, I felt strong, familiar hands grab me out of the water and pull me towards the boat. Eyes to see my dad, who was now in the water, frantically saying the words, "Vidod, talk to me. Are you okay?" I began to cough up water aggressively as I tried to move my legs and arms, but I still couldn't. My eyelids felt heavy now, closed themselves. I just closed my eyes for a minute as I heard my dad trying to get into the boat, and as I opened what I had seen down there, he was gone. I tried to scream out to him, and within minutes, I passed out. I woke up at home, and I was floating away on the river. I couldn't move for weeks, but in time I started to feel my arms and legs again. I also noticed there was a strange marking on my chest where the creature had touched me, but I decided not to tell anyone in my family, as I didn't want them to see me as a crazy person. So I made up a story telling them how it was over and how my dad had saved me. They didn't find my dad's body for over 6 months after that day, but he was eventually found, washed up by the riverside. The cops said he had died by drowning, but hard to believe as my father was also an excellent swimmer. As they took him away, I noticed numerous to the one on my chest all over my father's body, and I felt fear paralyze each and every inch of mine. After the morbid incident and my dad's funeral, my family and I wanted a new, fresh start to the United States. Even though it's been 11 years, it seems like this happened just yesterday. I've always felt like I've been carrying a huge weight on my chest as I decided that it was my burden to bear. But in the past, I decided to share my story with the world, as I wanted to feel some form of relief. This is the first this story out loud, and I know many of you won't believe it, as you all think I'm crazy. But I know I'm not. Every time I look at my chest in the mirror, I see the souvenir that creature left me. And as ghastly as it sounds, it reassures me that my sanity is still in check.
My name is Edward, movie fanatic. Whether it's the classic movies or the newer ones, I usually enjoy them all. And to be why I can do that is that they don't scare me anymore. This is not because the movies are bad or because I'm a very brave. No, quite the opposite. The reason I'm not afraid of them is that I lived through something much worse. One says, many times, reality overcomes fiction. It all started the day Lucy separated from her boyfriend. They had been dating for more than 3 years, and the moment she saw his messages and found out he was cheating on her, we told her that he was no good for her and that she would be better off. But she refused to listen. As time went by, he stopped responding to her and she became more and more depressed. I did not live with her. My parents told me that she hardly ate. She just locked herself in her room. From what little I could talk to her, I knew she was watching horror movies. You see, Lucy was never a fan of horror. In fact, she hated these movies. Ex-boyfriend, Frank, loved them. Surely she was trying to win him back. This must have been nothing more than a last-ditch. I knew that as a brother, I should try to comfort her since there was no way I would pay any attention to my parents. So one day, surprise her. How many times do I have to tell them not to come into my... Oh, it's you, Ed. Hey, that time? No, I was just starting to watch a movie. Do you want to join me? Of course. We spent the whole day watching horror movies. The movies were not particularly good. They were all modern movies that were not. I took advantage of the time to talk to her about her life, her ex-boyfriend, and how she must be doing better. I recommended better movies. So when we finished the second one, she agreed to watch Chucky, my favorite movie. During the first few movies, Lucy was unfocused and lost. Her face was going from one place to another. She looked at person. When we saw Chucky, something in her seemed to change. She was focused, staring intently at the most obsessed. It seemed she had made the right choice. I left the house with a bittersweet taste. I had managed to talk to my sister. On the other hand, I found out something I didn't like. In a week, she was going to see her. During the whole week, Lucy was talking about Chucky every day. I assumed she was doing it because she was nervous, so I went along with it. Everything was going great until that fateful day came. A call came from my mother. She told me she was scared because she heard Lucy crying and screaming a lot. Our farm was big, so there wasn't much I could do if there was a fight. I started my car and sped towards my parents' house. But it felt like it had been forever. When I arrived, the door was open, and I was met with a totally different scene than Instead of two teenagers fighting, my father's corpse was in the dining room, lifeless. His body was all cut. Someone had really taken it out on him. I ran as fast as I could to my sister's room, but on the way, I saw blood in the... I knew what this meant. My mother's body was behind the bookshelf. As with my father, her body was full of... But this was different. Her fingers were gone. Someone had made much crueler cuts. So cruel that it didn't seem like an act of madness. Whoever had done this seemed to have enjoyed it. I fell to the floor crying, forgetting about everything else. My parents were dead. Suddenly, a scream. It was my sister, screaming desperately from her room. At that moment, I understood everything. Her ex-boyfriend had done this, and now he was probably going to do it to her. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen's room, ready to fight the man who had killed my family and was probably attacking my sister. When I opened the door, he's in disbelief at what I was seeing. Frank was there, just as I thought, but he was not the one with the knife. Wounded, covering a wound. With the knife in hand, Lucy was behind him, dressed as Chucky, screaming in pain. You're just in time! Lucy, what are you doing? I'm strong, brother. Just like you wanted showed me that movie. What? This is all thanks to you. Thanks to you, I'm now strong enough, not anyone. Mom and Dad won't order me around anymore. It won't hurt if Frank leaves me. I'm going to be as Chucky. I'm going to be Chucky. When I turned around, I understood why Lucy was screaming. Face. It was like Chucky's. A needle was piercing different parts of her face, probably to imitate the wounds that the dead. Only hers was different. She was wounded. She was bleeding with a maniacal look. This wasn't my sister. It wasn't even Chucky's look. It was as if a monster was looking at me. Lucy, you've gone crazy. This is not you. So it's not me, huh? I see, brother. A nuisance like Mom and Dad. What? What are you saying, Lucy? I just help you. Once help, Edward. I am happy now. And if you can't understand that, it's because you're just bad. And you know what? You'll have the same fate as them. At this threat, I pulled back and but she didn't react to it. She didn't seem to care. It was as if she knew I wouldn't do anything to her. Right. She slowly approached me with her bloody face brandishing her knife, having fun for every second that passed. Sure, the same thing happened to my parents. Everyone could have stopped her, but no one did. No one wanted. When she was in front of me, she lunged to attack me, but something saved my life. Frank had rammed her a fatal blow. Run! It's too late for me. Get out of here now! Lucy became angrier than ever and began stabbing him until Frank stopped breathing. I ran as fast as I could, and as if my life depended on it. And indeed, it did. I reached the end of the house, and as I turned, I realized that Lucy was not behind me. She had never chased me. She was too busy stabbing her ex-boyfriend. I called the police, and within minutes, they arrived at the house. I didn't want to see what happened, but she was still stabbing Frank's corpse with a tetric smile. Luckily, she didn't turn on the police. She just gave them a blank stare as they took her away. Lucy was sentenced to life imprisonment. I visited her every week, but eventually I stopped. She was no longer my sister. With each passing week, and facial expressions became more and more Chucky-like. Her face wound had healed, but the marks that remained just like the doll in the movie. I never understood how a movie could do so much damage. Maybe she whispered. I never got to see Chucky again, and I will never forget that day. The day that I parents, but I also lost my sister.
Basements have served a purpose for centuries. Someone has used them for storage or hold prisoners. They've had practical use. Considering the fact that some have been used, some contain hidden places where people have endured torture. It's a tale as old as time, and it's what makes people... Something about being underground in a dark, dark place is unsettling, no matter what is down there. I'm Ned, and my son Fallon is turning 14 years old, and insisted he wanted his bedroom to be in the... I'm becoming a man, Dad. I need my own space. My wife Alicia placed a full plate of eggs and bacon in front of him.
We should let him, Ned. I can even help you set it up. How would you like that?
You don't have a say. You're not my mom, and I don't need your help. I had just gotten married to Alicia my ex-wife and I divorced about 2 years ago. Fallon has been resentful ever since, as he hasn't seen his mother. Try as my poor Alicia might, Fallon wouldn't accept her as a mother figure in his life. Not that Alicia tried to replace her, but the one in that role. Fallon, we've talked about this. You can't talk to Alicia like that. Like what? Stating the facts. That's what the therapist told me to do. The therapist didn't give you a warrant to be an asshole either. She's part of this house now, and you will respect her. Fallon pushed his plate away. I have to go. I yelled after him. I'm not hungry. He grabbed his backpack and stormed out the door, then placed her hand on top of mine.
I appreciate you standing up for me.
No need to thank me for that, baby.
I know, but I married a good man, and I want him to know that.
Me. I married a good woman, and I know with time, Fallon will see that too.
Thank you. Listen, Fallon's birthday is in 2 weeks, and if he really wants his room in the basement, I say to him and create a little man cave for him. I'll design it myself, and I know some guys who can whip it up into...
Alicia, you don't have to be that nice to him. Besides, it's not like a gesture like that will win him over.
No, but being hard on him is only going to push him further. I know how hard divorce can be on it came from a broken home, too. Let me do this for him, as my gift.
If you insist, I'll let you surprise him. Alicia was an interior designer, and with inspiration from Fallon's room and other interests, made up a section of the basement to be Fallon's own man cave, complete with a full-sized bed, LED lights, a flat-screen gaming system. She also threw in a small refrigerator for all his soda pop and snacks. By the time his birthday came around, his eyes lit up, and to my surprise, he hugged Alicia and thanked her over and over again. This I've ever seen. I'm sorry for being mean.
I accept your apology.
Settled in the basement, he started spending a lot of time down there. It got to the point where he was either in school or down in the basement. He didn't come up for anything. Then he started locking the basement. I didn't think anything of it until I started hearing screaming. I went down to see what was going on, pounding on the basement door. Fallon, I just heard screaming. Fine, Dad. I'm just watching a horror movie. Can you turn it down, please? Fine. Went back upstairs, and it was quiet the rest of the night. As time went on, women began to go missing. A strange wafting from the basement, and Fallon just insisted that he had left some cheese out, and as soon as he finds it, he'll dispose of it. Thinking about his excuses didn't sit well with me, especially since he started being not only disrespectful toward Alicia. He grew agitated and unreasonable. One day, while he was at school and Alicia was on a business trip, the basement, and what I saw drained the color from my face. His man cave looked like any teenage boy's room, came from down the hall. I followed the trail, and to my horror, there was a room I didn't know about. 6 women were all tied up and gagged. They were in nothing but a bra and underwear, clearly dehydrated, with fear in their eyes. I looked around and found a video camera set up on a shelf above Fallon's bed. I took the camera. I only made it a few seconds before I stopped and doubled over, puking all over the floor. I ran upstairs and called the police. There was a reason we cut contact with my ex-wife, Emily. Why Fallon was in therapy. His room at night and mark her territory, if you catch my drift. I went to the juvenile jail to talk to him, as I haven't really seen him since they arrested him. I sat down at the desk and watched him come sit on the opposite side of us. We each picked up the phone. Hey, Fallon. Hi, Dad. What'd you do to those women? A sinister smile crept across his lips, and the look in his eyes was not of my son, a demon. I needed her, Dad. I needed Mom. She used to make me feel good, and you took that away from me. I wanted it back. I had to get that feeling back. You took her away, so this is all your fault. I hung up the phone and stood. To not only hear that my son, but he also seemed to enjoy it, and was violating other women to seek that pleasure. I was so ashamed to look at him ever again. Alicia and I moved away and started a new life in a new city. Fallon is dead to me.
Last year on Valentine's Day, my fiancée died in a car crash. She and I were engaged for 4 months and dating for 6 years. She was my high school sweetheart. We were about to tie the knot in a few weeks. But her death devastated me. I was in depression for several months. I found it hard to cope with her loss. Now I'm a lot better. My family and friends keep suggesting to loving again. I'm just 26 after all, and I have a long life ahead of me. It was February, and I remember thinking that it would be exactly 1 year since Rhea died. But instead of dwelling on her loss, a new girl I met in my office, a try. That evening, I came back home from work. I decided to cook myself dinner, and that's when I got a text. My first thought was that it must be from her, the girl I was going out with the next day. The text said, "I miss you, baby," and it was sent from Rhea's number. How was that possible? We disconnected her number a few months ago after her passing. How was I getting a text from her number? Did someone else get her number by chance? Yes, that must be the case. It's impossible from her number otherwise. Dismissing the whole ordeal, I started with the dinner preparation. There was another message. This time it was a voice recording again from Rhea's number. Looks like the number trying to get in touch with her lover. I must text her back and let her know this is the wrong number. Not to mention, pop up on my phone after almost a year was a bit difficult for me. I didn't want to spiral into my depression again, not when I've struggled to get myself out of it in the first place. But it won't hurt to listen to the voicemail. I thought and played it.
Hi, babe. It's me, Rhea. I hope you haven't forgot. I just wanted to wish you a happy Valentine's Day in advance. I know I couldn't wish you luck in the circumstances, but I want you to know that I still love you.
I could forget, but not that voice. It was Rhea. How was it possible? Words. Saying I was shocked would be an understatement. I didn't know what to do, and to be honest, I cared too. I ignored the message and put my phone aside. I started with my dinner, almost without any new message. I plated my food and moved into the living room to turn on the TV. That's when my phone. I was afraid to check the message, but I did it anyway. The name on my screen is Serena. Felt a bit relieved. It's the girl from work with whom I have a date tomorrow. The Rivera restaurant at 7 in the evening. Looked like Serena wanted to confirm our date. I texted her back that I would be there. A few seconds later, I got thinking it would be Selena's. I didn't check the name. I just opened the text. What the text said. Am I that replaceable, Martin? Whoever was texting me knew my name. Definitely not a wrong number. This was intentional. These messages were meant for me. Message 2, and ate dinner. However, I suddenly felt heavy for some reason, like there was someone, except it was weird, given I was the only one in my apartment. I watched my TV, but from the corner I saw a black shadowy figure of a woman walking towards my bedroom. I thought I was hallucinating. I knew the next day was going to be tough for me, so my mind was playing tricks on me. But just a few minutes later, in the corner of my eye, I again saw the woman walk out of my bedroom. Now, she was approaching the couch, but I was turning to look at her. I was staring at the TV as she was coming near the couch. Suddenly, the couch dipped. She sat right beside me. A black shadow woman was right next to me on the couch, and I looked at her.
Why are you ignoring me?
That's when I turned. I had to. How could I not? That was the voice of Rhea. But as soon as I turned, expecting it to be somehow, there was a demonic entity that looked exactly like her, that had red, hollow eyes, a wedding dress, and had a black veil over her face. The last thing I remembered was her haunting eye as I passed out. Currently, I'm in a hospital. My aunt found me in my apartment passed out on the couch on Valentine's Day. It's the 16th of February now, which means 3 days. I tried to tell them what I saw, but none of them believed it. My doctors think depression and sleeping pills and passed out, but I clearly remember not taking a single pill that day. The more I try to convince my family that I saw Rhea's ghost that night, the more they all think that I'm going crazy. How can I be crazy? I don't understand why no one believes me. So to prove that I'm not lying or making, I asked for my brother to get my phone, but he said that my phone was lying on the floor next to me, broken, as if someone had smashed it. I did not do that. But my family and the doctors say that maybe I was so depressed and angry that I may have... This is all so confusing. Do you at least believe in my story? Or do you think I'm crazy too? Will I ever be able to have a happy Valentine's Day?
My name is Hazel, and I'm a second-grade teacher. I always hear kids screaming in excitement every time they get a visit. I would see them smile from ear to ear with happiness, and it would instantly take me back to my experience with the tooth fairy the night when he almost killed me. My stepdad, Kenneth Carter, was an amazing personality, which was odd in his profession, as he was a dentist, and they were stereotypically known to be mean and... My mom met him when she went on a healthy eating bender, as both of them shared a passion for a healthy lifestyle, talking about eating healthy and getting enough nutrients. And I remember every time I drank milk as a kid, my step say,
"Make sure you get enough of that calcium, honey. Remember, there's nothing more important than that sweet, sweet calcium."
With all that, he always had a great sense of humor, and he was nice to be around. Now, having a dentist meant my oral hygiene was in pristine condition, as he literally took care of my teeth himself and made sure I exercising habits. But I was 8 at the time, and my teeth had started to fall out regardless of my good oral hygiene. Stepdad Kenneth was always there telling me nice things about how they would grow back all healthy and strong. And while that was at my age, all I really cared about was the visit I was going to get from the tooth fairy. Keeping my tooth under my pillow that night, and even though my stepdad knew the tooth fairy wasn't real, he didn't tell me, kept the magic alive. I woke up abruptly that night, and I remember hearing weird and disturbing crunching. It was really dark, but I looked up to see the silhouette of a huge figure looming over me. I was moved, so I closed my eyes tightly and hoped that whoever it was would just go away. It continued for a while before they stopped, and once they did, I immediately forced myself to sleep, hoping that it was a bad dream. The next morning, I looked under my pillow to see $500, $1 million in my 8-year-old mind. I remember running downstairs shouting, "Mommy, Mommy, look at me!" And the shocked look on her face when she saw the $500 bills in my hand. She then Kenneth, my stepdad, and said, "That's a bit too much, but I'll be sure to tell the Tooth Fairy I see her." At the time, I didn't understand what was going on, as I didn't know it was my stepdad who'd put the money. I remember looking at him, and he was intensely staring at me like I was food. I was a little creeped, but I didn't question it, as I was a bit more concerned with the insane amount of money I had just gotten, and to be honest, was so excited about it that I had entirely forgotten the weird occurrence that happened the night before. I went to tell him my mom, and he looked at me with a dark smile and said calmly,
That's great. Hopefully, the Tooth Fairy...
Now, the following months were weird, as my stepdad's personality had completely changed. The man known to be funny and caring was now silent and distant, and he kept staring at me with a wanting look in his eye. But my mother was just too busy to notice. I remember one afternoon, I was standing behind and I was singing a rhyme I had learned in school that week. And while I was singing, I remember my stepdad just sitting on the couch. It'd become a normal thing now, so I had learned to ignore it. He stared at me for a while before saying,
Need to do, Hazel. I'll be right back.
He then proceeded to go out through the back door. Now, I did to what he said, as I just kept singing my rhyme, and that was when I felt the full force of the door slam into my face. I could feel my lip bleeding as my stepfather, Kenneth, who was now standing behind the front door, standing over me, saying,
Hazel, I didn't know you were there. Are you all right? Did you lose a tooth?
He added with more curiosity than the first, as if he was more concerned about me losing a tooth than my well-being. As I sat on the floor holding my bleeding lip, I sensed something was terribly wrong, as I knew my stepfather Kenneth was there. I was singing my rhyme behind the front door, and I became really frightened, as something told me he had done this. What was even weirder was that he was now intensely staring at the floor, and when I traced his eyes to see what he was, I noticed he was staring directly at the place where 2 of my bloody teeth were lying. Then he looked at me and said,
We don't have to tell Mom about this, but on the bright side, the Tooth Fairy gets to see you tonight.
I laughed. As I told her, I fell. I knew she didn't believe me, but she didn't pry. That night, I felt uneasy and scared as my mind began to wander. I began to ask myself why my stepdad would want to hurt. I remember putting my teeth under my pillow before trying to sleep, but I couldn't, as I still felt uneasy. I heard someone come into my room. I immediately knew it wasn't the Tooth Fairy, as I could clearly see the shape of a man walking. I felt hands rustle under my pillow, followed by horrid crunching sounds. I was but I knew I had to run, so I screamed in hopes my parents would hear, and I ran to get the lights. The sight I saw horrified me to the bone. My stepdad was standing next. He was smiling ecstatically, which revealed his bloody mouth. As I saw him chomping seemed to be teeth. It was obvious he was in pain, despite the sick smile he had on his face, as I could see him the more he chomped down on my hard tooth. He couldn't break them, so he just stood there continuously biting down himself. He then looked at me and spoke.
Don't get scared, child. That delicious calcium boost. It's wonderful.
He said excitedly with his
I don't know why they are so good. They don't taste like my patient's teeth. Simply divine. Maybe it's because I took care of them myself.
He then swallowed before towards me.
Now don't scream, Hazel. I just need more of that calcium. I really can't wait any longer.
And before I could move, he punched me hard in the mouth, and I began.
Did you lose a tooth?
Looking at me with true curiosity, I began to scream as he hit me hard on my jaw again. This time, I tasted blood in my mouth as I spat out a tooth. No words could describe the complete look of joy on his face. I was in severe pain as I watched him rush like an animal. At the time, I didn't know or understand why he did what he did next, But as I realized why he then proceeded to beat out all my teeth in order to satisfy his inhumane hunger up until this day, this is the only thing I can remember from my childhood, as the trauma was overwhelming. Anymore, as my lips were swollen, and I watched him continually pound on my jaw. I tried hitting him, but what 8-year-old girl do against the 36-year-old man? All my efforts were useless, and I began to feel the tears roll down. It didn't take long before my vision became blurry, and as I was about to pass out, my mom rushed into the room with a pan and immediately struck my stepfather on the head. As he fell to the floor, she quickly carried me and ran out of the house. In minutes, we were surrounded by cops. I was taken to the hospital, and I was told I had severe head and lip damage due to the continuous blows to my mouth and my head. They told my mom that if she hadn't got, I would have been beaten to death. They also told me my teeth would grow back since I was young, but I'd have to use were forcefully beaten out. The doctors then informed my mom I had to undergo serious therapy, speak or talk to anyone. Later that week, I saw my stepdad on the news. The head local dentist confesses to eating the teeth of his patients. And it was revealed that my stepdad, Kenneth, who ate the teeth he removed from his patients. It said he told the cops that as a dentist, it was the best calcium ever have, and he would do it again in a heartbeat. The reporter then revealed that he specifically said my teeth he had ever tasted, as he took care of them since I was little, making them the best calcium diet. It's been 19 years since this happened, and my stepdad is still spending the rest of his life in prison, attempted murder. My mom never forgave herself for bringing him into our home, and to this day, still what I had to go through. I had intense therapy for the next 6 years of my life, and while I'm doing, I sometimes think about my stepfather, Kenneth, and wonder if he is slowly taking out the teeth of other prisoners to clean calcium diet.
This morbid incident happened 8 years ago. Saving up money for a new house, and at the end of July, I had managed to get enough money to buy one. I probably looked through over 20 during my search, and after looking through those 20, I finally found the one that was perfect for me. A house that was located at the end of the street. It had plenty of rooms, as it was a family house, and it also had a beautiful interior. As amazing as it was, the best thing about the house was its price. The deal I had gotten on it seemed, as I wondered why a house this big and this nice was on sale for such a low price. I remember the realtor told me that she had been trying to sell the house for a while now, but for some reason most of the potential buyers always seemed to change their minds before the deal was made. I remember being completely baffled, as I wondered why anyone in their right mind would deal like this. As I said earlier, the deal I was getting on this house seemed too good to be true. I really wanted to get it off her hands. I knew there had to be some sort of catch or a hidden reason as to why people didn't. I also knew that I wouldn't get a deal like this in the next million years, so I ignored my worried thoughts. I moved in the following week after everything concerning the paperwork had been settled. I had a lot of a family house, and I lived alone. And while I didn't plan on finding a nice girl and starting a family yet, I looked at my new house future investment, as I told myself that I'd use it in case I ever wanted to do that in the future. Weeks were perfect, as I was still in my honeymoon phase. But as time passed by, I started to notice some very about my new house. For starters, I'd noticed the kids around the neighborhood avoided my house like it was the plague. I thought at first, but I soon realized that almost all the kids in the neighborhood were deathly afraid of my house. And it wasn't just some adults, too, were also going out of their way to avoid my home. When I first noticed this, I thought there was a but after inspecting the front and back of the house, I saw nothing wrong. The strange behavior of my neighbors eventually me, and as more time passed by, things got even worse, as not only were they avoiding my house, most to avoid me too. I was never told why I was being treated like this, as I asked myself if it was something, and even when I had tried asking what the problem was, I was always brushed off. The joy I had originally got had now turned into worry. I spent days racking my brain for answers to their strange behavior, and while first, the 13th of November 2014 would bring a terrifying clue to the answers I was looking. I'd gotten back a bit late from work that day. I was too tired to cook anything, so I microwaved dinner and watched some TV. After that, I decided to have a quick shower, and after running the water and I laid down on my bed, as I just wanted to shut my eyes for a little while before entering the shower. I guess I was pretty tired, and after 4+ hours, I was abruptly woken up by the sound of a talking child as I kept hearing the words, "My father?" I was perplexed at first, as I wondered where the voice was coming from. Then I remembered before I came to bed, so I told myself the voice had to be coming from the TV. I was still a bit confused off the television, but it wasn't the first time I had left it on, so I made my way downstairs to turn it off. To the living room, I was sure that it was the television now, as the sound was loudest there, but before I could reach the living room. Now, I was pretty sure that the voice was coming from the television, but standing close to the doorway of the living room, I realized it wasn't, because the room was completely dark, and I told myself that if the TV was on, light from it illuminating the room. I was completely frightened now, as even if the voice wasn't coming from, it was definitely coming from the living room. I was so scared that I couldn't move, and I just heard this child's voice repeat the words, "Please call my father. Please." I don't know how long I stood there. I'm guessing it was about 30 minutes or so, but just like it started out of nowhere, the voice abruptly stopped. I stood there for a while thinking I was going to hear it again, but I heard nothing but silence. After a couple of minutes, I decided to walk up to my bed as I was too scared to look into the living room that night. Morning soon arrived, and I didn't sleep a wink. I eventually found the courage to check my living room. I saw absolutely nothing. Everything was exactly the way I'd left it last night. The mind-boggling as I wondered what it could have been. I decided not to tell anyone about it, as crazy. I did, however, have a hard time sleeping after that. A couple of weeks the first strange incident, I had managed to start sleeping well again, as I told myself my mind was just playing tricks on me alone. But as the next day came, I started to doubt that theory. I was inside the living room reading a book when I heard the words, "My child." Just like the last time, the voice kept repeating itself, but this time I could tell that I quickly grabbed the signed baseball bat I had, as it was the only weapon I could find. I was really sick the last time it happened, but I told myself that this time I wasn't just going to stand there and do nothing, so I made where it was coming from. I traced the voice back to one of the bedrooms, and when I got there, I lifted up the bat. Shockingly, the instant I opened the door, the voice stopped. As I stood in that, a lot of things started to run through my head. I knew any other person in my shoes would have come up with strange theories, haunted, but I wasn't a spiritual person, and I didn't believe in stuff like that. But at the same time, very hard to come up with a feasible explanation for this. I thought about going to the cops and asking them to carry out I knew how ridiculous and insane I would look telling the cops that I was hearing voices in my house. The peculiar situation, as no matter how much I racked my brain, I didn't know what to do. I'd basically spent my house, so leaving wasn't an option. So I calmed myself, and I hoped it would eventually stop. Days after the second incident, the third followed. I had started spending longer hours at work as I tried my best to lengthen the time I spent out of the house. I remember returning late from work that Wednesday. After arriving at my house, I tried to open the door when I heard a man say the words, "Please let us go." House. Shocked, I backed away from the house, but no matter how far I got, I could still hear the voice. I felt everything that night as I was terrified, frightened and scared, but I was also annoyed. The incident was the last straw for me. Knowing full well that insurance doesn't cover spirits or ghosts, I had a drastic option, as I hired an acclaimed spiritual guru to get rid of the unwelcome house guests. The man arrived the next morning, and after pouring his powders and salts around my house, he started to say some incantations. I believe anything he was doing would work, and I was a bit salty that I had to pay $160 for this. So I hoped that this mumbo-jumbo would be successful. The guru's incantations took some time, and while first, I eventually started to hear gut-wrenching screams all over the house. I held my ears in pain as through my very soul. The guru, who had now noticed I was in pain, asked what was wrong, so I screams I was hearing. I eventually couldn't take it anymore, so I tried tracing the sounds like last time, and I reaming from the basement. When I got there, it felt like the screams were coming from the floor, so I started hitting the floor. The guru who had followed me down thought I had gone crazy, but I didn't care as I wanted the screaming to stop, hitting the floor, and once I broke the concrete, the screaming stopped. The things I had seen under the broken made me scream, and it wasn't long before the cops were called. 3 were found in the floor of my basement. 2 of them belonged to adults, and the third one belonged to a child. They were questioning, and I told them everything that had been happening in my home, and after I told them everything in detail, the cops then proceeded to ends that had been perplexing me for the past few months. I was told by the police officers that around 30 years ago, the entire previously lived in my house had gone missing. Investigations revealed that the last man to be seen with the family was called Ryan Howard. The man was taken in for questioning, but unfortunately, he managed to kill himself before the police. The case eventually slowed down after that, as Ryan Howard was the only person who could have told the police where to find the detectives believed he had murdered the family, as Mr. Howard's track record showed that he had been in prison for attempted murder before. I was also told that the strange sentences I heard were exactly the same statements given by the questioned witnesses. It revealed that Harry, the child of Mr. and Mrs. Brewer, was heard saying the words, "Please call my father." Witnesses also stated that his mother, Sarah's, known last words were, "Don't hurt my child." These Brewers were, "Please, let us go." These were all the recorded statements that were got from the house. Due to this incident, the house had been stigmatized by the surrounding neighborhood and potential buyers who always lost out about its past. The case had apparently gone cold a long time ago, with no leads on the whereabouts of the family. I said that, if not for my strange experiences, they might never have found the bodies. Even after this incident is still fresh inside my head. It took a while before things got back to normal, and with a lot of therapy, moved past it. The strange occurrences actually led me to see the world differently, and in a more open-minded way. I've come to realize that there are things in this world that science or logic can't explain. I've never heard any of that day, and while the ghastly incident did leave me with some trauma, I'm very glad I was able to give the Brewer family they so desperately needed.